Hi everyone, hope you're doing well and staying safe. My name is Ria, I am your Vice President of External Affairs, and today me and my co-exec Shivani will be going through the Excel workshop today. You might remember that we had an Excel workshop last quarter where we went through the basic layout of Excel as well as some simple functions such as summation and average. I'll be actually going through some of the more complicated basic functions that we covered in our last Excel workshop, and then Shivani will be showing you some more advanced, a little bit more complicated functions. I will be putting all of the timestamps in the description, so if there's a specific function you want to learn about, you can go ahead and click that and just forward straight to that in the video. Now let's get on with it. Just a quick overview, Excel is a software program to create spreadsheets. If you're here, you'll already know that. It's really useful for analyzing data mainly. So going forward, first we're going to be downloading a new data set, so please do go ahead and work along with us so you can get some experience in these different functions, and I will show you how to download the data set and where to get it, and then we'll be going through the if statements, lookups, and pivot tables, and then Shivani will be going over some more advanced functions later on. So first things first, let's go ahead and download the data. We are actually going to be getting that from the Microsoft website itself. So you can pause this and follow along with the instructions, or you can do it along with me. I will be going here, searching Excel, sample data set, going to the second link, and then we're going to click this link where data is available for download. This is a very basic financial sample data set, and we're just going to click that and open it up. Okay, here we are. So we have this data set that has several different types of information here. We have segment, country, product. This is basically just financial data about product sales across different countries and sectors. So we are going to go ahead and move on to the first function. The first function we're going over is an if statement, and this basically allows you to have logical comparisons between values, and you are going to use this to figure out whether a set of values fits a specific condition you have in mind. So the formula for an if statement is a logical test, a value if true, and a value if false. So if we go around that one by one, the logical test means that it is a condition for what you're looking for, so if something is greater than or equal to, etc. And then the value if true is what you want the column to say if this value in a cell fits the condition, and the value of false is obviously the opposite. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So for practice, we're going to create a new column in our data set that says high sales if the units sold column is above 1,000 and low sales if it's below. So let's go back to our worksheet, and we're going to create a column here next to units sold, insert, called testing, and this is where we're going to go through the different functions that we're going to try. So we're going to write our if statement, if, and then our logical test is whether units sold, so E2, since we're doing it on this first function, and then that will apply all the way downwards for the rest of them. So whether E2 is greater than 1,000, and then our value if true should be high sales, and then our value if false should be low sales. And there you go. So now you can see that all of these say high sales or low sales based on whether they're greater than or less than 1,000. Perfect, so that is our first function. Remember, and this applies to all the functions that we're going to be going over, that you can go through and just search Google for anything that you have in mind. So this is kind of just to introduce you to what functions are there and how they're usually used. But Excel is very, very advanced. So anything that you can think of, you can probably do in Excel, and all you have to do is a quick Google search to do that. So here's the answer for you to reference later, the if statement, the condition, and then the value of true and false. So now we're going to go over the lookup function, where if you want to look up a value in a one column or one row range, this function just helps you find a value in a specific range. It's really useful for very large data sets. So we are going to be using the lookup function to find all the rows where the sales price is 125. So we're going to be using the same column here. We're going to be going through and saying, so we're going to say equals lookup, and then we're going to put the column in which we're looking, which is the sales price right here. So that's going to be H. And when you do H colon H, that means the whole column in Excel. And then we're going to be putting the value, which is 125. Okay, and so now you can see that any column that has 125 in it is written right here. And the way that this would be most useful to us is if we select the whole worksheet and then sort by ascending. So we're looking for every value that has 125 here. And so now you can see that we put all the values that have 125 at the top. And this would be really useful just if we want to sort the sheet based on the specific value that we're looking for. So now we're going to go back and we're going to clear this column. Okay, so now that we've cleared this column, we're going to go back to our sheet. Here I've put the answer for your reference. So you look up the column H, the value, and then you sort the data set by this value so you can see all of them. Now we're going to go into the next function that we're going to look at, and this is going to be pivot tables. This is kind of a buzzword in the business world, so you've definitely probably heard of this phrase before, and pivot tables are essentially a really, really useful function in Excel that helps you summarize some values of data, and it kind of helps you create patterns in huge data sets that you wouldn't be able to see otherwise. So let's go back to our worksheet. I've deleted the column that had our kind of testing column and renamed the data set data. And now we're going to Command A on the whole data set. If you're not on Mac, that would be Control A. And then we're going to go to Table and then Summarize with Pivot Table. We're going to select a table or range, and that is Financials, which is just the general name that's already existing here. And then we're going to create a new worksheet. And then we're going to, just for our own sake, rename that Pivot Table. And this is just a good practice for when you are using a data set that has multiple kind of tabs. It's useful to be able to locate things easily rather than say, what does sheet 1 include and what does sheet 2 include? Go to our little sidebar analysis tab. We have several different things that we can click on, and we're going to reorganize these in a way that seems most useful to us. So right now, our practice is to reorganize data so that we can see the gross sales of each product by country and year. So we're going to go back over here. We want to reorganize sales of products. So we're going to go into product and drag that into rows. We're going to country. We're going to put that on top so that way we can see the products in each country. Then we're going to go to gross sales and we're going to click that and drag that. Oh, it's already in values, perfect. And then we want it by year. So we're going to have the year up here. And so now we can see that we have all of these numbers, but they're still kind of not that clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all these values, and then we're going to right click, and then you can see number format. So now we have number format. We're going to click currency, and then we're going to click the second value, and there you go. Now we can see it all in terms of currency. Now we can be able to kind of go through this more minutely and recognize some patterns. So we could compare this gross sales of products within a country or maybe the same product across different countries. And this is just a lot more easier than if we went to look at the data set and there's like hundreds of values in here. And so it's just hard to be able to find specific patterns in data. So that's going to be it for me today. I am so happy to have talked about if statements, lookups, and pivot tables with you, and now I'm going to turn it over to Shivani to talk about some more advanced functions in Excel.
I'm going to just build off of her and go over a couple new tools that we haven't talked about before that are particularly useful for data analysis and visualization, which of course is one of the main purposes of Excel. I want to emphasize, I think that the most important tool that we have used or that we have taught you so far is definitely the pivot table. So if there's one thing I really want you guys to take away, it would be how to use a pivot table. I'm going to show like a couple of simpler tools that can really help with the way that you see and analyze data. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing I want to talk about is a very simple but a very, very useful tool. It's called the filter tool. The purpose of the filter is that it literally just filters your data. It only displays records or displays data that meets a certain criteria. The execution is very simple. You click on a cell, you click on the filter button in the home tab, and then a filter symbol will show up. And so I'm going to now show you guys how we can filter the data set that we have so that we only see data from Germany. And then we're going to do another example filtering where we filter units sold, that column from high to low. Your Excel might look different if you have like the 2016 version, which I believe is the newest. So when I downloaded this data set, it appeared that all the columns already had filters labeled on them. So if I click on, let's say, country, you can see that there's a little drop-down bar where you can filter it. And if I go to like the home page where if I go to, the home page where you can see the filter tool, you can see up here that the filter is highlighted. And I just clicked on it and the filter got removed. If I want to put it on again, I just click the filter button and boom, there's a little filter. So the first task was to filter by, so we only see like the country Germany, like the data from the country. So super simple. I go to the country column, I deselect this button that says select all, and I only click on Germany. So once I click on Germany, I just close the filter opening. Sorry, my dog is here. She's just butting in. But now you can see that I filtered it, and you can see we only see data from Germany, and this is reflected in all the other columns as well. So very, very simple, very, very useful, especially when you have like a big data set like this, and sometimes you just want to look at something more specific. Filters help with that. Pivot tables help with that too, and in fact, there's like a little filter section ingrained in the pivot table when you're like building a pivot table, so the two really go hand in hand. So I'm just going to select all again so that we're back to normal. And then just to show this again in a more advanced way, okay, so the second one was to filter units sold from high to low. So back we go again. So we're going to the units sold filter, and I'm just going to click on the filter tab again, the filter drop-down menu, and click on descending. So now you can see the entire data set got rearranged from units sold. We can see like the highest units sold, which was like some Paseo product from the United States in the government section. And then it goes all the way down to the lowest units sold. So again, a very, very useful way to just rearrange your data so you can focus on a particular criteria. Just gonna press Command Z so that we're back to normal. And there's the filter. You can definitely play with this a lot. You can like filter by color, you can do ascending, descending. It's a very useful thing. So if you want to play around with it more, we have like a bunch of different columns here from which you can filter from. All right, so that's the second thing that I want to show you guys. It's also pretty simple, but pretty useful, which is like the best combination with Excel. It's called conditional formatting. So conditional formatting enables you to highlight cells with a certain color depending on the cell's value. This is really useful when, let's say, you have a lot of numbers, but you want to visually see which cells within like a certain column have values exceeding like a certain number. Let's say you only want to highlight the values in a column that exceed 100. You can use conditional formatting so that every cell with a value over 100 is in the color green, so that it immediately just jumps out to you. It's a really nice way to organize your data and add like a little visual element to it. It's a very simple execution. You just highlight the data set that you're interested in, and you click on the conditional formatting button, which is in the home tab. So we're going to practice that right now. So using the data set, we're going to format it so that we see units sold, any units sold over 1,000 in green, and the bottom 10% of gross sales in red. Let me just remember this. So units sold over 1,000 in green, bottom 10% of gross sales in red. All right, going back to Excel. Okay, so here we have the units sold. So like I said, first step for conditional formatting is that you click on the entire column. Like I said, conditional formatting is in the home tab. Just moves a little zoom thing over. You can see it right over here in the top. So all I do is click on conditional formatting. I want to go on the highlight cell rules, and this one was a greater than rule. I'm saying I only want to highlight the values that are greater than 1,000. So I click on greater than and 1,000, and I want it to be green. It's like a positive thing. It has really high sales, so do the green fill. And then boom, suddenly all the units sold that are over 1,000 are highlighted in green. You can also use like a more complicated rule. So what I'm gonna do per the instructions on the PowerPoint, I'm gonna do the bottom 10% of gross sales in red. So we're gonna see exactly which products or which categories are resulting in low gross sales. So highlighted the data set that I'm interested in. Again, I click conditional formatting. This time I go to top bottom rules. I do bottom 10%. And this is like a negative thing, so I do want it to be in red. And now I can see which products or which like criteria are yielding the worst gross sales. So sure, it's really easy to see how convenient conditional formatting can be to really draw to the reader's eye like which units and which values are important. It can be really used to make a point. For instance, if you want to say that we've had really successful sales and you wanted to show whoever you're presenting to that so many of your sales have hit over 1,000 units sold, this would be a great way to do it. So again, as you can see, there are like a lot of different ways you can play around with conditional formatting. I just showed two pretty simple ones. This is also something you can just play around with a lot with this data set in your own time if you're interested in. Now, going back to the slideshow. Okay, the last thing I want to show are charts. So this is really simple. I'm pretty sure all of you guys would intuitively know how to make a chart. Charts are used to organize your data visually. You just highlight the columns that you're interested in. You click on the desired graph, like line or bar or pie chart in the charts tab. So it's pretty simple, but I think this data set is actually like a pretty interesting challenge for charts because typically when we think of things that we want to graph, I don't know how to describe this well, but everything sort of corresponds to each other. So for instance, you'll have something that shows like in one column, certain types of, let's say, department stores like Target, Macy's. In another column, you'll have like an amount of sales. And it'll be really like intuitive to see a graph where the x-axis is all the different like stores, and then the y-axis you can have like little bars for the sales. But the data set that we have is a little bit complicated because you don't really have that type of correspondence. Every column has like a bunch of repeats and things like that. So it's a little, I think for this sort of, I'm not doing a very good job of articulating exactly why this data set is a little bit tougher to use for graphs, but there's just not that like natural correspondence between like columns and rows that sort of lend itself to making like easy graphs because there's so many like repeated values and not a lot of like causality, if that makes sense, between all the different columns. So we're going to first simplify the data set using a pivot table. So it's just good extra pivot table practice, and then create a bar chart out of that. And what I want to see is the different profits for each segment. So I'm going to go back to the Excel sheet. Okay, I'm just going to Control Z here and get rid of the formatting. And let me just first show you why it's complicated. So if I just like clicked on the segment section, and then I wanted to click on, good God, I hate scrolling. Okay, and I wanted to click on, let's say, profits. So I'm doing Command, which is on my Mac, and then clicking on this column. That's a really useful way to highlight like multiple columns that are not like next to each other. You just press the Command key. And then I go to the Charts tab and I just click on a column graph. You're just getting like it doesn't really make a lot of sense because like I said, the data sets aren't really like corresponding to each other. There are like a bunch of different repeats in the segments, and there are a bunch of different things in the profit as well, and they're not really corresponding to each other well. So as we can see, if we just like try to graph it without using a pivot table, we're getting like a very messy solution. So let me just delete this. So let's actually go ahead and create a pivot table. So I am going to go ahead and highlight this entire data set because we want to use all of it. And then I'm going to go to, where is it? Data and pivot table. There we go. So it just automatically opened it in a different sheet for me. And like I said, I wanted to see specifically profit over the different segments. So the segments were things like government, middle market, etc. So they just kind of like made their own pivot table for me, but I'm just gonna take their units and put them away. So in the row labels, I want the segments. So I drag that down over here. And then in the column labels, this is pretty cool. You can see like the sum of the units of product sold for each of the some of the units sold for each of the products. So this is already a pretty useful pivot table, but I'm looking for profit. So I'm gonna get rid of product, bring down profit. You also, like I mentioned, you can see like a filter section in the pivot table. So it just, again, goes to show how filters and pivot tables work hand in hand. Okay, so what I'm realizing is that I actually don't really want profit to be a column label because it doesn't make sense for each of the profit values to have their own column. I just want the sum of the profit in each of these segments. So I'm going to actually take the profit from the column label and move that back. Okay, great. So now we can see each segment, the sum of the profit in each segment. We can see just immediately, this just makes the information so much clearer. I can see that enterprise had like a negative sum profit, or government did really, really well. So now that we are done with our pivot table, it's just like a very, very simple pivot table. Now it's super easy to just highlight the things that you're interested in, go to charts. I just want like a simple column, like a bar chart, and boom, here we have it. We have a really simple pivot table. And then if you want to like really simple graph. If you want to jazz it up and make it like pretty, there are a bunch of different things you can do. I don't really have like the time in this video to go over all of them, but I recommend going to chart layout, which you can see over here up top right next to chart. And you can do things like change the chart title, the axis title. You can do a legend. You can create data labels. You can create a trend line. This one is really simple. So whatever. Trend line doesn't really make sense here because it's like not over time. It's just like categorization, but I just want to show you guys anyways. But I would just really play with the whole chart layout section of it well and practice. Like once you have made this simple graph of profits over the different segments, just play around with the chart layout and try to jazz up your graph and make it aesthetically pleasing, because presentation really is everything. That is all. So let me go back to let me just pause sharing. Okay, you know what? Zoom is not my thing. I'm just gonna finish the video like this, but I hope you guys learned something new. Definitely, it's very easy to find data sets online. Just find some data sets online and practice the tools that we gave you guys. And I hope you find this useful. So bye, have a nice day.